Sorry, I was just getting very excited about showing you these new features within Excel, and I think it's really going to change the way in which we look at data within Excel as well, and remove some of the complicated formulas that one needs. So the very first thing that we're going to look at is a feature called a function called Xlookup. So if I wanted to show the region of a department, I would normally use Vlookup for that. And so what I've got in my spreadsheet, I've got a load of employee data here, and I've got some drop down tabs here that show department and show the region that those departments sit in. And so that's very straightforward, because I would simply say equal to Vlookup, and I would say that I want to look up this value, and I want to look up that value in the table that is department number. And I would say that I want to use the second column, because that's where my regions exist. And I would say that actually I want that to be an exact match. So I'd select exact match with that. And I get Scotland. And all is well with the world. That's a nice and straightforward VLOOKUP that we would use within a spreadsheet. However, data's not always presented to us as nicely as that, and we may have a situation where we've got the region and department the wrong way round. And VLOOKUP doesn't work in that situation, because when I select the region, the data area, it always uses the first column as the search criteria, and then asks you which column after that do we want to retrieve the result from. And so I couldn't do that here, because I want to look up the department, but my region value is to the left. And that is where Xlookup comes in. So Xlookup gives us a whole bunch of different options. So the lookup value is the same. So the lookup value is the department number. That's nice and straightforward. But then you get a lookup array and a return array. And it's important to understand that those two things can be in completely different places. So my lookup array, here I'm going to go to my drop down and I'm going to look up, I'm not going to look on region, I'm going to look up on department. Almost looked up the wrong thing then. That would have been interesting. So I've looked up region. So that is going to check B4 against region, and then return array. I'm going to go back and I'm going to say I want region there. So I've got the region table, sorry, looking up department and then the region information. And if I click OK on that, I get Scotland, and I can just copy that down and I get the answer to all my regions. But in my drop down area, I've also got an example here where I've got a table of regions and a table of departments. And I want to show you how you can use Xlookup to do exactly the same thing as we've done here. So I'm going to go back into the same function, and I'm going to select department, but I'm going to select it from this table. So I've got the department, and I'm going to select the region from this table. It sits in a different place completely, but it still returns me the correct answer. Because Xlookup, the way it treats these two arrays, whatever position it finds the question against, it will also find the same position of the answer. So you can have two completely different sets of data, and as long as they're sequenced in the same way, then Xlookup would find those. We can also say, which is quite nice in Xlookup, if it's not found, we can say show not found. So you get some nice text saying I can't find the answer to that region. And we can also do several other things around matching and searching. And I've just done taken some screenshots here that's quite helpful. So with match mode, unlike Vlookup, where you've got to specify you want it to be an exact match, with Xlookup, it defaults always to say, I'm assuming you want an exact match. But you also get the option to say -1, which says exact match, but if you can't find an exact match, find the smaller one. Or 1 says exact match, but if you can't, then find the next one. And then 2 says, actually, let's look at some wildcard options. So you've got question mark, which is looking at a single character. You've got asterisk, which looks at any number of characters. And you've got the tilde mark, which actually says ignore the question marks or the asterisk. So again, just looking at match mode, lots of options there to decide how we want to match on the Xlookup. And also the search mode, which I could really see being powerful. So if you had a list of employees, for example, and every time they started a new role in that list, so their name would appear more than once, but the date of them starting a role would be different as they move down the list. What search mode can do, you can say start from the bottom of the list and find me the first answer. So if you wanted to know the last role that employee had, then you could just start from the bottom of the list rather than from the top, and it will find the first answer for that employee when they started work. So some really strong functionality in Xlookup that well worth a visit. The other thing that is new within Excel, which I really love, is dynamic arrays. So as an introduction to dynamic arrays, I've got some data here. It's the name of students, it's the classes they were in, the year they were in, and the score that they got in their last tests. And we're going to use this data to show you how dynamic arrays work. So the first thing that we want to do is we want to establish some drop downs for this set of data. So I'm going to go to my drop down sheet. I always have a drop down sheet in my spreadsheets where I put my drop down lists. And ordinarily you'd be typing in a table your drop down requirements. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a query, and I'm going to sort bear with me. Just had a bit of a senior moment. To sort, I'm going to use the unique value option, and I'm going to say I want to sort the unique items of subject within this table. That's going to give me all of the subjects in this table in order. I'm going to remove this item here, and I want you to see that it adjusts this table depending on the data that you've got within your database. So I've now got a list of subjects that we've got within that table, and I also want to do the same thing, sort unique, and in the school data I'm going to select the year. So there you go, I've now got my years and I've got my subjects. And in fact, I was trying to work out why I've got an extra 0 on there, and it's because I haven't actually, in this section here, I haven't actually selected the table name. I've selected all values. I'm just going to come back here and select the correct. So when I've got the arrow down there, that is going to select the subject part of the table name, and then I've got some nice clean lists here. So that's really good. I've now got dynamic lists here, and if I change my data, these change accordingly. And what I then want to do is I want to be able to have a drop down for subject. So to do that, I'm going to go into data, and I'm going to go into data validation, and I'm going to select a list. And for the source, I want to refer to this drop down. Now I'm going to select the first cell where that dynamic array exists, and I'm going to put a hash at the end of that. And when I press enter, what that has done is that has referenced what it calls a spilled array. So when I click on the drop down, I get all three subjects, because although I've only selected one cell, the hash says this is an array, reference all of the content of that array. So I can select the subject, and I want to do the same with the year. So I'm going to go back here, I'm going to select the list, I'm going to select the drop down, and again, because I've done a reference to spilled array, I get all of the years. So I've now got English for year 7 selected. Now what I can do here is I can say equal to the filter, and what filter says is get me a subset of the data that I'm requesting. So if I go back to school data and I select the whole of that table, and then what I want to say is that I want to select the whole of the table for subjects that are equal to B1. I put an asterisk in there, that is in effect an and I want to go back to my school data and say year equal to B2. Watch what happens. That literally drops all of the relevant data from the school data, that matches the subject and matches the year, and it fills Excel with all of that data. If I had some information in my spreadsheet, say here, then you get a hash spill error on that formula, and it shows you where you've got the conflict. So whenever you're using this, just being aware that you need to ensure that your spreadsheet has spare rows beneath it. And you can see that there we have English 7. I haven't done, as part of this formula, I haven't said if it's empty, but I could say can't find anything here. And therefore, if I went back to my school data and added myself onto the bottom, and let's do French as a subject, let's put me in year 12, and let's say I've got 81%. Then here, a couple of things I want you to notice. I've now got year 12 and I've now got French. Yeah, so these dynamic arrays are working. And if I select year 12 for English, it says I can't find anything, because the only thing that we've got in our school data for year 12 is me doing French. So if I select French on that, it finds me. I think this is a really exciting and interesting feature within Excel. To have done this before with formula would have taken a long time. So back to you, Tracy.
Thank you very much for that, Si. I think I'm going to have to go through and just listen to that a couple more times. Whilst you were talking, I could sort of hear all the things that I think are going to be really interesting for us to be able to use.